Hello all, and welcome back to the Online Test Conf. Rob, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
We can actually hear you loud and clear.
Awesome.
Guys, we're going to go over to the second keynote of today, and as a reminder, do not leave the sessions after round is done because we still have another thing that we will be doing, and that is the lightning talks. But I want to introduce Rob, and I think that I mentioned it yesterday that it was a similar case with Lalit from Tea with Testers from SIM that we have been working together for quite a number of years, but we never actually got to meet. And it's the same with Rob. I think that we've been communicating and collaborating one way or another for close to 5, maybe even 7 years.
That's probably longer than that, but yeah.
Jesus, that means that you're old. But and it's amazing that even though there was once a time that we were even some kilometers apart, we didn't get to meet. And I think that we will live the magic and keep it on because it just makes it good. But so that's one of the things, and it's one of the things that makes, I think, our community very special, that we can have these types of sessions and that we can have these types of chats and even these types of relationships by having the virtual and not so virtual channels open. And again, this is another example of that. And I'm really happy to have Rob in here. I also want to tell something that is that Rob is one of the most professional communicators that I know. And I say that not in order to give a compliment, but because I know that he's actually making this presentation from home. And we were chatting earlier, and he was saying that he was afraid that we would all listen to his kids on the background because he's doing the presentation from home. So I think that many of us, if not most of us, do have kids at home. And many of us, if not most of us, have had that time where we're actually speaking to someone, customers, colleagues, or something, and we hear the kids on the background. And for me, it only means that we are making something authentic, and this is not a Hollywood screaming or presentation where everything smokes and mirrors. This is the real thing. So guys, first of all, if you manage to listen to Rob's kids on the background, please make sure to put it on the Slack channel. I think that it will make me very happy. And in any case, I want to leave it to Rob, and I'm very eager to listen to his chat because I do believe that it's a very relevant chat on an aspect that it might be a little bit less connected even to testing. I'm hoping in a sense that it's less connected to testing, and it's more connected to other aspects of the software development lifecycle, because I do believe that one of the biggest things that we need to do is to learn more even about stuff that is maybe a little bit let's say farther than our realms. So really looking forward into it. So Rob, I think that you can take the mic and the screen, and I'll try to keep quiet as I eagerly listen to your kids on the background.
Excellent. Thank you. Cheers for that intro, Joel. So let me just bring up the presentation. So Joel, if you can just confirm whether you can see that presentation.
Wait, let me switch screens myself. Yes, we can see your screen.
Excellent. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining me today for this talk. So yeah, as Joel mentioned, it's what time? 7:20 here in the UK. It's bedtime. I've got 3 boys. They're very tired. So if you do hear all sorts of screaming, shouting, fighting, and random noises, it isn't me. I am okay. I know you will be worried about my safety, but I am fine. But I will tell you one thing. For years, I did slow, boring, and ineffective software development. The problem was that the companies I worked for relied on this slow, boring, and ineffective software development to release their products. It's no surprise then that we didn't actually ship that software very often. The reason I was doing slow, boring, and ineffective development was because I was stuck in this mindset that assumed we could plan and design everything up front and simply follow the plan. That somehow following the plan meant success. That somehow the plan was reality. That somehow we had nothing new to learn as we built the product. So here's what used to happen when a project kicked off. As a tester on the project, I'd be emailed the specification of distraction from the project office. I would read it, have a little giggle, and then reread it again just to make sure I hadn't mistakenly seen thousands of features crammed into one document. After realizing the project office were indeed serious about the specification of this disaster, I'd then head to my test case management system of doom to see what test cases I already had that could cover this specification. I would then identify that gap between the specification and my test cases. What test cases did I need to create? What could I reuse? And from this, I would know how many test cases in total I would need to run to cover 100% of the specification by disaster. As chief tester on the project, though, I also knew how many testers I had. But what I needed to do was work out how many testers I would need to use for how much time in order to complete everything. And to do this, I used a super simple magical calculation that worked on the assumption that each tester could complete 10 test cases per day. For example, let's say I identify 4,000 test cases I wanted to run, and I have a team of 10 testers. Then that would give me 40 days. It would take 40 days for a team of 10 to run all 4,000 test cases. This is excellent news. Although I was always taught to add contingency to the plan, 20% in fact, because no plan survives first contact with the enemy. So that would take the estimate to 48 days. Armed with this number, I'd head to the project office to give them the good news. They'd laugh at me, argue with me, berate me, and say the estimate is too high and that actually testing is the only part of the project that can be squeezed. So what I thought didn't really matter. It made no difference. They would then randomly pick a date and tell me I had to complete it by then. I'd leave the project office wondering why I was even consulted on estimation in the first place. They would then add my dates and everyone else's, string them together and create a Gantt chart of devastation the size of a small country. And from this Gantt chart, we would get the final release date, the date when we'd be delivering this beauty into production. And then the fun would begin. Whilst the programmers were busy writing code, the testers were busy writing test plans that no one would actually ever read. Realizing that no one really cared about testing apart from us, we'd crack on with writing those missing test cases we had identified earlier. The programmers would always take longer to deliver due to technical problems, shady estimates, and change requests. The project managers would rewrite Gantt charts and fiddle with resource numbers all day, trying desperately to make it all fit to this magical release date. At the start of each working day, they would stick a newly printed Gantt chart to the office wall, showing the new dates, the slippages, and the unmovable end date. The programmers would blow straight through their contingency and start eating into everybody else's. A few more days would pass and all project contingency was swallowed across all teams, and we still had no working software to test. And finally, we get the product and it would explode, causing a series of small fires, injuring several ops engineers. We'd then throw the software back to the programmers with bug reports full of scorn, disappointment, and rude words. They would take ages to fix the problems as the problem code was written on day one and has a whole load of other code piled up on top of it. It didn't help that the programmers that wrote it have since left and no one could really understand why they wrote it that way. Eventually, we get to the build and now time was seriously running out. Using our Gantt chart of devastation, we knew we'd miss our deadline by miles, so the management did the only thing they knew how to do. They bought everybody pizza and asked them to work the evenings and weekends, all in a vain attempt to get more work out of them. After all, delivering against the Gantt chart of devastation was now our only goal. As we neared the end, we'd find bug after bug after bug, and our testing was now really far behind. So we drafted in people from HR, finance, sales, and marketing to help test. In fact, anyone in the business who could breathe and click a mouse became a tester for a week. And doesn't that say something about the type of testing that we were doing? Eventually, we get to the release date, and even though we were still only 87% complete, an executive somewhere would decide to ship it. And the product would come straight back from customers who now hated us. New plans emerged, and new Gantt charts were printed and stuck to the wall. And after lots more bug reports, change requests, and code deploys, we would eventually, finally, at last, ship this monstrosity into production. It didn't always match what the customer had requested, though. We'd then get invited to a sunset review meeting to discuss how the project went, what went well and what didn't go so well. And in every single one of those meetings, someone would say that our ability to ship software was slow. I can't believe it took so long to ship some software. And someone else would say that our approach to building software was boring. I don't mind helping you, but my word, that was boring. And someone else would say that software delivery was ineffective. We have all of these clever people, and this is the best that we can do. And the conclusion would be that we would never, ever run a project like that ever again. We'd all then leave the meeting, take a few days off, only to return the following week and start the next project in exactly the same way again. It doesn't have to be this way. There's loads of reasons why I'm a fan of releasing software frequently. But there are three really big reasons that affect most companies, and this is why I think Agile is the solution for these people. Reason number one is that customers and markets move fast. When your customers' markets move quickly and their needs move with them, then so too must your release process. If you can't keep up, I'm fairly certain there'll be someone else in the marketplace that can. And then reason number two, major releases made us sad. This here is Kevin Harris. I don't know whether Kevin's actually attending this conference today, but you might know him. He speaks on the circuit. I used to work with Kevin. He's a tester. And as you can see, he's really sad. He's sad because big releases contain lots of code. Lots of code suggests lots of change. And lots of change, all at the same time, is actually quite risky. Risky deployment make dev teams sad, and customers often don't like the fallout either. Major releases are also something that happen infrequently and often require their own project team and plan. If you release frequently, you remove the pain and it soon just becomes a standard operating procedure. Now, reason number three is all about getting paid. The value you add as a development team is not truly realized until you release the software and it's been used in live by the very people who need it or required it. This is what we call the ultimate feedback loop. Of course, it might be that it's not revenue that you're actually trying to release. It could be that you're trying to learn something or you're trying to get some validation or some feedback. But ultimately, your job is to ship some software, so it pays to get really good at it. Years ago, I worked on projects much like the one that I've described at the start of this talk. I then worked to reduce our 14-month release cycle to weekly, scaled Agile and built an amazing Agile team. And years ago, you would have heard me do this same talk, and at this point, I would have branched off and talked about testing and development strategies. Because when I was in the mix as an engineering manager, I thought the tactics like continuous integration, test-driven development, retrospectives, all this Agile sort of stuff was why we were succeeding. And they played a role for sure, but they weren't why we succeeded. And then about a year ago or so, I took an opportunity to move sideways into HR. And I took with me the same desire to basically shorten the feedback loops and build self-sustaining, fun and productive teams in HR. And none of the testing or dev tactics moved with me. I mean, why should they? It doesn't make sense to do test-driven development in HR. It was only after doing Agile in HR and closing out my time as an engineering manager with that full 360-degree perspective did I find the words to describe what we'd done. In a nutshell, what we'd done is we'd released agility. We hadn't bought it, like many companies try to do, rarely with success. We hadn't tried to force agility with hard deadlines and targets and brutish leadership. A lot of companies try to do that. And we hadn't pretended that we were doing Agile, like 90% of the Agile companies out there. Trust me, when you try to hire people who've worked in Agile environments, you find that what most people call Agile is nothing more than a glorified waterfall approach. No, we'd actually released agility, and we'd released it at a pace that made sense for our business and customers, at a rate that enabled our people to lead this change and our teams and our technologies to stay alongside it and support it. And looking back on how we'd done it gave me the ability to create the following framework, which I'll share with you in a minute. But the framework is built on two aspects, both of which belong to management, which is why my current business, Cultivated Management, focuses so much on that management tier. Management must create the right conditions to build those strong cultural foundations and then give people the freedom and the autonomy to iterate and adapt. Sounds really simple, just build strong foundations and then iterate and adapt. But before we dig into the 10 elements that I think help you to release agility, maybe we should start looking at what agility actually is. Now, Agile means many things to many people, and some people get very angry and shouty about it, so I will tread very carefully. Maybe it would be prudent to start with what Agile is not. Now, Agile is not the pursuit of labels, tick boxes, ceremonies, and activities. ATD, standard Kanban boards, DevOps, CI, sprint reviews, these are all solutions to problems. If you tick all of those boxes, there's still no guarantee you're going to release software. In fact, I've seen plenty of teams that can tick all those boxes and more, and they still never ship anything. So now that we have that out of the way, maybe we could look at what I think Agile is. Now, I think Agile is about questioning the world around us to learn how to move quickly and easily towards our purpose. The keywords there are learning and purpose. But what is the purpose of your team? We've talked about this. The purpose is to ship something. Software, policies, initiatives, plans, sales, new starters, A/B tests, marketing, website, anything. And the question is, what's stopping you from shipping with ease and speed? And this involves studying, which can take time and be eye-opening, which is why most companies and most people don't like to do it. What you discover here are the problems. And I can guarantee you that most of these problems will not be technical. Most of the problems that stop you from shipping, whatever it is that you're shipping, are basically people, processes, and communication. And almost all people, process, and communication problems come down to simple behaviors. What people do, what they say, how they say it. This group of behaviors or habits are also essentially the culture. The culture of your organization is nothing more than group habit. It's what people do every day. So if people are always late for meetings, you have a culture of lateness. If people are rude or aggressive to each other and allowed to be, then you have a culture of rudeness and aggression. If people go above and beyond for the customer and are allowed to, then you have a customer service culture. Given that agility is about becoming aware of what is stopping you achieving your purpose, and these things that stop you are behavioral based, and that the sum of these behaviors essentially creates your culture, then surely, in order to make change, you just need to change people's behaviors. Yes, that is true, but it's not very easy. You see, people's behaviors are influenced and governed mostly by the systems that they work in. Have you ever seen sane, rational people doing stupid things? Have you ever yourself had to do something because you're following a process or a system or a measure that just doesn't make sense? So this is why I focus so much on management and why management must be involved for agility to work. Because the best way to change behaviors is to change the system that people work in. And that system, the flow of communication, the processes, the flow of work, the vision, the purpose, the team structure, the budgeting, the measures, the rewards mechanisms, all of this belongs to management. It is management's job to own this and to try and improve it with obviously the people in their teams. And this is why most agile transitions or adoptions fail, because management don't create the right conditions. They simply bring in agile practitioners, or they tell their teams to try and change what are actually fundamentally management problems. And the main reason that management don't get on board with agile is because management don't see their jobs as being enablers, and they don't see how the systems they help to create influence or govern behaviors. So going back to how we succeeded, if we look back at that, what was clear was that we had an approach to management that highlighted two very clear principles. And it's these principles that I encourage all managers, leaders, test leads, managers, you name it, anybody in the organization to think about if you manage people. And here are the two key principles. The first one is that our people are actually the engine for our success. They are not a cost to be managed. They are not a resource to get more from. Okay, people are not a line item on a spreadsheet to be wrangled and moved and drained of all that they can return. They're people. And for Agile to flourish in your organization, your management must realize this, that the very people you have are the engine of your success. They are the people that will help you succeed. So most managers just wish their staff would do what they were told and that they didn't cost so much. This is not good. And principle number two is that these great people only succeed if they're working in a system that supports them. We've covered this. There's no point in hiring great testers, great developers, or whatever, and throwing them into a system of chaos that doesn't support them doing the right work. So with that said, onward to the 10 elements that I think help you to release agility. Now, this is a management's perspective, because all 10 of these belong to management. The first 5 are really from the perspective of the very people in our teams, the very people who are going to help bring about agility. And the second 5 are really from the management's perspective. But all 10 together build strong foundations and they allow for adaptation and iteration. But let's be clear, all 10 of these are management's responsibilities. That doesn't mean to say that people in the team can't own them, but the managers must fundamentally take responsibility for these. So moving on, I'm going to go through each one of these. Don't worry, there's another slide at the end which will cover all of this. So first off, super simple. This is all over the place. Simon Sinek, starting with why. This is big topic. It's all about purpose. Now it's very important that you define the purpose. Why does the company exist? Why does your team exist? Why are you doing Agile? Is this purpose actually compelling enough for people to put energy behind it? So right now, particularly here in the UK, it's an employees market right now. There simply aren't enough talented people. Okay, so as a hiring manager, you have to work really hard to hire great people. And good people have lots of choices of where to work. So why would they invest the energy in your company if someone else down the road is doing something more compelling? So the trick to good management is actually nothing more than to make all of your problems so compelling and interesting that amazing people want to help you solve them. So this all sounds a little bit like fluffy management speak, but the purpose tells people why the company exists. The vision tells people what the company is trying to achieve. And the values tell you how they do it. So releasing agility is a very long and painful process for most companies. It can get very, very hard at times. And in those times of difficulty, it's super important that people know what the company is trying to achieve, why it exists, and how they should operate, what decisions they should be able to make. And the better you can get clarity over the purpose, the more engaged people will be to contribute to helping the business achieve its goals. So number 2, what's expected of me? As an employee in a team, you always want to know what's expected of you. So right now, maybe you could just pop your hands up in the air if you know what's expected of you at work and how work plays into what you do plays into the bigger success of the business. I thought so. There's not many of you, and don't worry, I can't actually see you, but I bet there's a load of you now checking your webcams. But people must know what is expected of them and how they contribute to success. Otherwise, why are they there? Why are they in this business? Objectives are useful management tools, but nothing beats simple clarity over what people are responsible for, and then the autonomy and the freedom to handle that responsibility using their own judgments. So what's expected of people as you release agility? You need to be able to answer that and then communicate it to the very people in your team. Number 3, how do I progress in my career? So people need clarity over how they're going to progress their careers and what learning opportunities are open to them. As managers, we should always be asking for more from people, but not more for less, but more with training, with diversity, with growth, with investment, so that they themselves can learn and grow and improve. And of course, this requires support and coaching from ourselves and maybe others in the business as well. As you release agility, there'll be a ton of things that you've never encountered before. And great people will jump on these, own these, and grow their careers. So number 4, how am I measured? How are you measuring people? People need to know how they're going to be measured. Do you know why you're measured? Do you know what success looks like for you? Do you know if you're doing a good job or not? Most people can very rarely answer positive to those. It's not uncommon in many teams for people to have no idea what measures are used until that horrible annual performance review, and well, let's hope it's a good one. So managers must be clear about what they expect from people and communicate that to the very people in the teams. And the measures must be nothing more than indicators that lead to discussions around performance, not targets, and individual measures very rarely work. Team measures are best. Not only does it not make sense, but it's hard to define measures of individuals who are working in teams. Rather, it's better the management focus on behaviors, observable behaviors, because they change with the systems. And do you know how much managers should study behaviors? I'm a big fan of that. If you've not read it already, you can get yourself over to cultivatormanagement.com/10 and you can grab a copy of the 10 behaviors of effective employees. So in that transition, that 14-month transition from yearly releases, 14-month releases to weekly releases, we had a goal of weekly release, but we never set it as a target because frankly, we didn't know whether our own systems were capable of achieving it. That's technical systems, product systems, but also the company system as well. So what did we do? We measured cycle times. This was the key to our success. This is the time between a story coming into the team from product owners and it being signed off by the product owners. You could extend that all the way into it being in production. We also measure velocity. It was a useful measure to look for trends on what impacted it over time. And we obviously looked at what measures were coming back from production in terms of number of good releases, number of rollbacks. None of these were targets. They were all there to help us measure and help us to have conversations about how to improve the business. So we also measured the release cadence, and we used to keep publishing it. First it was 14 months, then it was yearly, then it was 6 months, then it was 3 monthly, then it was fortnightly, and then fortnightly for what felt like a year. And then finally we got it down to about weekly, which was right for our business. So number 5, who's going to help me? So stick with me. We're almost halfway through now. I think we've got about 15, 20 minutes left until questions. But people need to know who is going to help them. There should be no shame at all in asking for help. In fact, managers must lead by example for asking for help too. Because frankly, as a management team, you're fumbling your way through this change just as much as everyone else is. The more you can ask for help, the more you can put your hand up and say, you know what, we don't know the answer to that, but we will collectively learn. The more you will encourage a learning culture. And people who don't ask for help should be encouraged to do so. In fact, it should be a bad thing not to ask for help. We all need help, but we also must know who to ask for help. And that's your job as a manager, is to highlight people who can help. The job is also to highlight great work that's going on. So shine a light on the great work. It's rare that there's a single way of working for everyone. So for example, if one of the teams is having some amazing success with specification by example, then shine a light on it. Show people what success looks like. Let people pair, encourage them to do a show and tell on how specification by example is working. But don't enforce it, because frankly, that might not work in every single team. Other ways will also succeed. And despite what most managers say, actually standardization is not helpful. It's certainly not helpful for tasks that aren't repeatable. So we should also be aware that on any journey to release agility, we'll encounter situations we've never encountered before. And the only way around these is to learn. So that's the 5 that really belong to management, but are from a person in the team perspective. The following 5 also belong to management, but these are from a management perspective. So this is what managers should be doing. So your people need a plan too. Now, one of the things that I always said through my management career is that people will always leave. Eventually they will leave for whatever reasons. And when they do leave, my goal is that they're going to be the best candidate on the market. They're going to go to the market. They're going to get a great job. They're going to move on, lead teams, build teams, do epic stuff. But people need a growth, training, and support plan in order to achieve that. So as managers, we often come up with plans for change, team structures, communication plans, workflow plans, tech plans, all sorts of stuff. But we often don't have plans for people. So your people need a plan too. How will they change during this journey to release agility? You must invest in management training also, because management is a very hard job, and most managers, frankly, have no idea what they're doing. You just must truly care about people too. Otherwise, why are you a manager? Don't be a manager if you don't like people. As people embrace a new way of working, you must also ensure that as a manager, you've done your homework, you've done the hard work, and you are there for your teams. So hire and retain the best people. Number 7, hiring good people is one of the most strategic activities a manager can do. If you get it wrong, you'll likely be spending your days dealing with the fallout. Get it right, and you can spend your days improving the systems instead of dealing with the people problems. So here's some ideas. Focus relentlessly on improving the hiring and onboarding process. It will never be good enough. Keep going. Make it hard to get a job. The only way the best make it through. Only the best people will then make it through, and the best people want to work with the best people. Good people gravitate to good people. And keep giving opportunities and growth to existing people. They will thrive on the growth and learning. Don't always be looking for bringing new talent. Encourage people to step into new roles and do something different. So number 8, and then maybe we'll come to the close, and we're close soon to number 10, ready for questions. So develop good systems and habits. We've talked about this. This is really the crux of what a manager should do. The success of a company is down to around 90 to 95% of the system and 5% the people. Edward Deming taught that many years ago, and it's something I genuinely believe in. Strangely, managers spend 90% of their time working on people and 10% on the system, but it's the wrong way around. What managers should be doing is improving the system and leaving their people alone, apart from the coaching and helping and training and dealing with any issues that pop up. A good system will support great employees. A bad system will hinder even the most determined of talented employees. And I've seen this so many times with peers and colleagues who've gone into companies that really they should be adding tons of value, and within 2, 3, 4 months, they've quit, they've left, because they can't change the systems, because the systems belong to managers. So improving the system is your job as a manager. Developing good habits is also where most agile coaches and consultants spend most of their time. These are things like TDD, BDD, ATDD, DevOps, etc., etc. These are solutions to problems. But there's little point in implementing solutions until you have solved your problems, or at least deeply understand them. For example, there's no point in automating some systems if the stuff within there is broken. There's no point in doing behavior-driven development if your product owners and testers and developers aren't even talking to each other. Okay, so most of these problems are people, and they won't be solved by the habits. But once you've solved them, those habits are success. So moving on, number 9, study, improve, and then bring in technology. So technology does not solve every problem, despite what many of us technologists might claim and believe. In fact, technology can make problems worse. The best way to solve a problem is to define it, improve it, and then bring in IT. If you want to look at John Seddon, that's one of his strategies. Technology makes failures worse, and it ripples these mistakes faster through the business. Speak to anybody who's relying on a CRM system that's full of dirty data. Why is the data dirty? Because the processors and the inputs and the people using it aren't following correct processes, or don't care, or aren't taught the correct way of doing stuff. So it's the same with automated tests. So what's the point in automating a bad test for some bad code, for a dodgy requirement with dubious business value? Technology does not solve your problems. Agility is not achieved through tooling. It's achieved through finding the problems, removing them so you can move quickly and easily towards your purpose. And once you've made the process effective, then bring in technology to amplify that goodness and make it more efficient. And then finally, element number 10 is to treat people as people. There is no place at all in frankly any business for command and control, but in agile business it will absolutely destroy it. So humiliation-based management is tantamount to bullying and should probably never have a place in any workplace whatsoever. So managers need to stop humiliating people and start treating them like people instead of costs to be managed. If you've never heard of the term JFDI, I will use the polite one, which is just flipping do it, has all the hallmarks of managers who are trying to buy or force agility. If you see that in your workplace, the chances are that it's not going to lead to some long-term success. You cannot rush it. You cannot just do it. Agility has to be released, not forced. The more you try to control it, the less control you will have. The more you force it, the less control you will have. The only motivation that managers should appreciate is that which comes from within, the intrinsic motivation, from people who have the self-respect already to do a good job and be left alone to do it, from those who will align with the purpose, the vision, and the values. You see, the purpose, the vision, and the values aren't fluffy management talk at all. They guide self-respecting, motivated people to do above and beyond for the customer and the company. So don't rush agility. Don't try to buy it. Work out what is stopping you from achieving your purpose and remove the barriers and the friction. Do this with amazing people who are fired up and engaged and believe in the purpose of the business, and you too can release agility. So here are the 10 elements to releasing agility. So what's the purpose? What's expected? How do I progress? How am I measured? And who will help me? These are what people in your team desperately want to know. And then the following 5 are people need a plan too. Hire and retain the best people, develop good systems and habits, study, improve, and then bring in technology, and treat people like people. The second 5 are for managers to do. The first 5 are for managers to guide and help. And all 10 belong to management. Management is the key to agility. And that can happen at test management level, dev management level, or ideally at executive level as well. So they're the 10 elements for releasing agility. I'll be in the Slack channel afterwards to answer any questions about specific stuff related to testing. And thank you very much. If you are interested, please try and help save Linnea, Christopher Nordstrom's daughter, who is fighting against a brain tumor. And there's an online sort of donation form there. And you can grab a free personal branding ebook if you head over to cultivatormanagement.com. personal-branding, and you can find me on Twitter there. And I think I might well have just about finished that talk before losing my voice. So, time for some questions.
Yeah, and you're not getting off the hook too easy because people do have questions. And thanks, Claire, for adding the Saving Linea link on the Slack channel. I think it's actually pretty cool in there. Now, Rob, I have my own question, but I will start with a question from other people in here. Which books or resources would you recommend for starting managers or managers that do not have that much experience? Where should people go to learn management?
That's a great question. So I think that there's a couple of things. I'm going to do a shameless plug for my own website here, though. But if you head to cultivatormanagement.com, and I think it's /reading list, or you'll find it on the homepage. There's a huge reading list of books categorized by sort of health, longevity management, et cetera, et cetera. So you can find a ton of resources on there. One of the most helpful resources has actually been a podcast called Manager Tools, and it's manager-tools.com. And it's a really good podcast. Probably 95% of the stuff is super useful, uber relevant. The other 5% is stuff that I probably, don't really agree with, but that's great. The other 95% is sort of game-changing stuff. The reality of management is you can read any philosophy about management you wish, and the other way will always work. There will always be somebody doing something different to you and having success. So the key to management is to read it as broadly and to learn as broadly as possible, but to then try those things and see what works, because management is really nothing more than sort of working with people and getting the best out of them, and removing those system constraints that stop people from doing greatness. So loads of books on the website. Manager-tools.com is a really good podcast. And of course, cultivatormanagement.com, the blog itself, is weekly goodness from me.
Yeah, and I can attest to that. I actually like reading it. There's a question here. I actually like it. I never thought about it. Do you have any advice for dealing with a team member who has pretty much given up?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing to do is to try and find out why they've given up. So this is sitting down, listening to them. Listening is one of the strongest things. It's the greatest compliment anyone can do, really, is to listen to someone else. If they're not necessarily forthcoming, then there's opportunities to try and give them inspiring work, encourage them to go to events, meetups, conferences, all sorts of different ways to tease out what it is that they have essentially given up about. If it's more than one employee, you might actually have a problem with the team itself. If it's just that one employee, then building strong relationships with them, trying to find out what's bothering them, why they've given up. Is it the work? Is there something happening in their personal life? This is what managers need to do, and it's really just sitting down and listening and using whatever skills you have with communication to tease out the underlying reason. Because one thing I found is that people often tell you one thing, but actually it's something slightly different. And one of the most effective ways, if you follow the Manager-Tools trinity of management, one of the things they suggest is a regular weekly one-to-one. This is something I have done from the beginning of my management career. And it lets you build up a very strong relationship with people. And you can talk about anything in those one-to-ones. It doesn't have to be work. This is really about building relationships. So you get to know people, they trust you, you trust them, and you can have those difficult conversations. And it really does work. It takes time though. So that's what I would suggest for that incident.
Any tools or any ideas? And again, this was something that was actually happening here. And I can talk for myself. I like people. I love people. I love the interactions with people. I hate managing people. And I know, again, there are people here who seem to echo. By the way, there are people here who say that they love managing, especially in the directors levels. Let's say that you were coaching me. Let's say that I need to manage people. How should I start? How should I get over my, I'm not sure if to call it a phobia or how to actually get started doing it right?
So the basics, I think, of management is to try and understand what it is that sort of drives people. It's that building relationship with people. You don't really manage people. It's an odd word as management because, like you saw in the talk, management is really about removing the blockers from doing good work. And one of the things that you can do as a manager is to engage in those one-to-ones with people and find out what it is that they're good at, what it is that they enjoy doing, and what it is that frustrates them. Because frankly, the things that frustrate them should be the things that you work on as a manager. There is nothing really about managing people. You don't manage them. What you do is you create the opportunities and the work environment for them to do good work. If they're really good, talented people, there's very little you have to do with them. One of the things you do have to do as a manager, though, is you have to give people feedback. And that feedback should always be behavior-based. So it should be based on what they've done, what they've said, how they've said it, what have, the outcomes of what it is that they've done. And try to give them a lot more positive than you do negative. Now, most people will really struggle with this because it's really hard. It's hard to sit someone down and give them positive feedback, let alone negative feedback. And so that's really what I would focus on is the one-to-ones, work out what's frustrating people and try and remove that for them. And try and work out what it is they want to achieve in their careers and try and put in place a plan to help them achieve that. And then really other than that, it's giving people feedback. It's observing the behaviors that you like, the behaviors that contribute to success. And it's about giving people feedback for those behaviors that don't. So in a meeting, somebody shouts at someone. Separately outside of that, you sit them to one side and you give them some feedback and say, that's not what we do. Can you please try to do something better next time? Or is there a problem? Do you need some coaching, etc.?
Okay, I'll try to take that to myself as well.
Yeah. But some people love management. I love it. I think it's brilliant. But only if you focus on 90% on the system and 10% on the people. If you get it the other way around, you'll be forever essentially dealing with lots of people problems, taking on people's problems that really they should solve for themselves. So yeah, you've got to get that balance right.
Sounds actually, I think that actually made a lot more sense to me right now. But we will stop the one-on-one coaching because there are too many people on the line at this point. In any case, Rob, it has been a great session. Thank you very much. A lot of people have been very active on the Slack channel, so it would be great if you can also go over that as well. And as always, a pleasure having you here. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. Thank you, everyone.